Kia ora. Now, once again this week, we're talking to Ian Dickinson, our roving reporter, who's over in the UK, and actually he's in Yorkshire this week. And we're first of all going to talk to Ian about Aldi. Now, Ian, you've been on your travels again and you've come up to Yorkshire and you've gone into Aldi just to give us an idea of what Aldi is like and whether you feel that sort of operation would work in New Zealand. Ian.
Kia ora, John. My wife and I travelled to Aldi. We had a look in a couple of Aldis actually, but we spent a bit more time in there this afternoon. And the first thing you note when you head into an Aldi is the huge number of Union Jacks on display and the promise around British quality. So you kind of head into the store, and it's generally a bit of a smaller store than some of the larger, the Asdas and the Morrisons. Seems to kind of occupy a smaller property. But I certainly think one of the things that New Zealand consumers will notice is the quite interesting brands that are on display. One of the things that Aldi seems to operate on is almost mimicking the main brands that we see in the supermarket, even to the point of mimicking branding and packaging, and names of products as well. And I think that's one of the main things that we noticed in the Aldi was rather than, and one of my favorite biscuits in the UK is a penguin. It's a chocolate biscuit. There are no penguin bars in Aldi, but there are seal bars. And Wagon Wheels is another brand that I like. I've got quite a sweet tooth. They're not wagon wheels, they're called cart wheels. And the packaging is intended to look very similar to the original packaging. And that's one of the, one of the main marks of Aldi. However, the good part about that is the prices are about 50% less than you would normally pay. It is incredibly cheap. And quite often in the newspaper, and I've noticed this since we've been over here, there are articles about the types of baked beans perhaps that you can buy. And the Aldi brand stacks up taste-wise and product-wise against some of the bigger names. And as you scan the aisles, there are actually kind of major brand names scattered in there, but very few. But we did see in there, we saw tomato ketchup made by Heinz alongside the Aldi one. The Aldi one, of course, is 50% less. We saw Pringle chips, we saw Shreddies, breakfast cereals, chocolate digestives. We saw Fairy clothes tabs. So it's a bit of a kind of an eclectic mix, some of the stuff that's in there that's main brands. But Aldi definitely markets itself on goods that look very similar or are named in a very similar way, but are remarkably cheap. But there are some brands in there, beers as well, are all named very popular, famous brands. But and then the brands that you get in Aldi, the named brands stack up very favorably as well to the other supermarkets that you visit. So it'd be quite an interesting experience, I think, for Kiwi consumers. And they don't have.
How do you think Kiwis would take to it? Do you think it would be a real popular store for them?
I think for those people who are looking, and in the UK, the inflation just hit 7%. It's all over the news today. I think where people are watching their pennies, Aldi is definitely a place that you can go and you can get your staple items and you can get them at a fraction of the price. And it would be very competitive against some of the major names in New Zealand. There's less range. So the Aldi brand baked beans is the one and only. You can't kind of scan through for multiple brands. So that's one thing I think that's a bit of a drawback, perhaps. There's less range, less options in many goods and many items. However, the price is very good. The number of checkouts is slightly less, I would say. And it was quite curious, there's no self-checkout in any of the Aldis we've been in, and we've been in a number. And there's also no 10 items or less. So we bought one item today and ended up in a huge queue. But you pay a fraction of the price. So I think it would be a popular move.
Now, what about, let's move away from Aldi and let's go to one of the big 4 supermarkets, which is Morrisons. And of course, just a little story about Ian. When he started off his working life, he worked at Morrisons. And so he's got a long history of Morrisons. Now, I've heard that their delis are being lauded as absolutely fantastic in comparison to delis over here. How did you feel about those?
And well, John, I actually went back to the Morrisons that I started working as a 16-year-old. I went to a little town called Rothwell and we visited the same store. It's been knocked down and rebuilt, about 5 times bigger than it was. John, I would say that the deli in Morrisons is probably representative of some of the great things that are happening in the UK supermarkets. The delis are mind-blowing. They're huge. And it's definitely a trend. The Morrisons we went in today, wonderful deli foods, double, triple the size of the ones that we see in our supermarkets in Auckland. Diversity of products as well, and the staff behind there. But what they're doing now is well, they're moving more to, as well as the deli, they're moving more to places where you can go in and you can actually kind of buy, almost it seems like takeaway food. It's quite common. We've seen the delis are also tagged onto perhaps a sushi bar, and you can buy sushi for lunch a little bit. I know we can do that in places like New World now, but we were in an Asda yesterday, and they had the deli was then tagged onto a Japanese and a Korean almost street food bar. So they almost have takeaway places within them. The size of the places too, I think, is the main advantage. And they're definitely going more for an experience. So everything is under one roof, not just kind of the takeaway foods, but obviously they have a massive range of homewares, a massive range of clothing. And you could literally go in and do your weekly shop, plus buy some clothes, plus buy yourself a new kettle and new pots and pans, all under the same roof. And in that way, I think the supermarkets are mopping up lots and lots of consumer cash. And at the same time as well, they then sell their own produce and their own goods within their cafes. They don't have outside operators. So Morrisons have a very wonderful cafe selling Morrisons goods, as has Sainsbury's. And I think that's definitely something that would be a big advantage if we could bring that kind of back to New Zealand with them.
Okay, well, we'll have to wind it up there, Ian, but thank you very much for your reports, and we look forward to seeing you back in Aotearoa very soon.